there! Bob from Oregon's Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCG Fam Show to you, my YouTube buddies. What's going on? Let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it after the show. Right now, let's just get into the show. Slurry test. Someone asked a question, I can't remember who it was, but it says in the clip, ask a question about, do slurry tests differ in larger or smaller pots? And Scott answered that quite well, but Scott and Christopher got into a more extended discussion about slurry tests, and they're such an important part of a nectar grow that I thought it might be very interesting to hear that whole little conversation about that. So I'd like you to watch the clip, and I'll talk to you after.
Okay, the love of growing. You guys talk about slurry tests a lot.
You already have in the show, twice.
3 Let's say you are monitoring your ppm, but one pot is a 5-gallon and one is a 10-gallon pot. Should the ppms read the same? Both plants have full root mass in the different pots. Nice show.
I mean, I would look at them as individuals and say, this plant is in its 3rd week of veg, this plant is in its 9th week of veg, bigger container. So you kind of want to know what they're both doing in their respective states of time in the grow, and then measure those numbers and then react to those results. So if you're in a 1 gallon and the parts per million are 900 and the pH is 6.4, then you probably just want to flush. And then you go test this 10 gallon and the parts per million are 450 and the pH is 6.5, then feed your normal feed, because this one has a lot more buffering capacity in the soil than this little one that doesn't have the buffering capacity. So you're kind of hydroponically feeding this one versus having a lot more buffering over in this one. So you can't treat them the same. I mean, you can, if everything looks great and you literally have 1s, 3s, and 5s and they're all in the same stage of grow, feel free to feed them all, but test them all separately and treat them differently when the results come back not the same, because they're not going to come back the same.
So if you're outside, you're in a 10 trillion gallon pot, it's still, you can do a slurry test. There's some point where, I mean, if you were in a 1,000 gallon pot with a little plant, and you're not digging out there, you're digging over here.
Well,
and so it should be.
The rule of thumb with all plants, and this is the beautiful thing about a creator, is here's this canopy, here's the rain, the tip of the root is always at the tip of the canopy. So if you're outdoors in a 1,000,000 gallon pot, you're not. You're literally just go to the edge of the canopy, go straight down, come back 3 or 4 inches. That's your sample, because that's where the outer ring of hydration's happening, and plants just naturally put out that level of root.
So when you're doing these slurries, you're more looking for a trend than an absolute number. But do you think those two would have a different number? If you plant one plant at 5 and one plant at 10, do you think you would see a different number between those two growing the same?
I would say even 2 plants that say they're both in 10s, both started at the same time, there's potential for those numbers to be vastly different.
Yeah, this one's closer to the CO2 machine. That one's closer to the LED light. That one's closer to a fan.
How quickly one starts to take over its container, like the root, because you can't see what's going on in the soil. You're not digging up all the roots and seeing. And a lot of times those plants that I see, like if I have 20 plants in a grow and one of them's struggling, and you do a slurry and you're seeing elevated numbers or lower numbers, there's usually, I feel like that plant was weaker coming out of the clone stage and was just weaker overall, and it's showing that a little bit later on. So you would, if everything's perfect, you hope you measure. All you would have to measure is one plant in your tent, let's say, and that you can rely on that number for every plant in there.
Can.
I mean, it's always going to be a lot of work to go test every single plant in there, but if you want to be
absolutely
at least
sure,
or at least change them up, that's a great way. Random samples.
Don't always take
like
plant 1, take 1, 6, 3, 5, 4, 10.
But with that too, be in the same neighborhood. But if you visibly have a bunch of plants and one of them's having a problem, you can almost guarantee you're going to see different numbers on that.
And if you started them all at the exact same time, and one's in a 1, one's in a 5, and one's in a 10, the 10 is not utilizing all the minerals and elements out of that 10 gallons worth of soil. The 1 is going to be depleted in 4 weeks. So this is going to be 100 parts per million, and that's still going to be 420 out of the bag, because they haven't accessed and consumed it all yet. Even with, I have root-bound plants on both. Well, but there's these core. I mean, once they hit the outer edge, they still can come in and consume. A truly root-bound plant would yield 0 soil at the end. I mean, you can really get into a bind that way, but yeah, I would always recommend, if you have multiple size containers or multiple ages of plants, separately slurry test them.
More work, but it's worth it.
Would you grow in a bigger pot, all else being equal?
Like I said, big bottoms, big tops.
Yeah,
but
I got you. So, well, just, I mean, as far as like your the health of the plant and all that. I mean, do you feel like that having some more soil, it gives you a kind of a buffer to issues?
This year, I'm loving my outdoor grow. I mean, those plants are doing phenomenal, and I'm loving having them actually in the ground. In my indoor garden, I really do prefer a burn and turn cycle. If I'm trying to have a cycle go in there right after, timing becomes an issue with bigger containers. So I find that nice medium of like 3 to 5s in the turn and burn scenario, where I'm trying to, like, as soon as that run's done, I want plants in there basically the day after cut down. Smaller containers favor that versus big containers. In my
You
opinion.
really got to be planning with, like, Pig does 15s.
Or have a bigger
So it literally is like 3 to 7 to 15, and then they're 10 weeks of both.
For this, obviously.
Yeah.
So you don't have a buffer of soil, but you have a buffer of more plants. That more things can go wrong, and you still got some
I
plants.
can have 1 or 2 give me an issue,
Yeah.
and I don't have to sweat bullets. Versus if I have this one,
And he's not vegging them for 10, 12 weeks in a 5, because if he did that, there's no way they're coming out of that surviving
okay.
without. You're feeding them hourly at the end of the cycle because they're so root bound.
So again, it's just different approaches on getting to the end result, but there's different ways of getting there.
Sure. Good answer. Good answer.
Okay, what do you think of it? Informative, entertaining, helpful? Let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. The OCG Fam Show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCG Fam Show. See you tomorrow.